An Artistic Survey Book by Jasmine Ruiz.
A Studio 113 production.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Ruiz, and this is my project that I made for the Crucible, and it's a scrapbook. So, in my project, I decided to take more of a Martha Stewart approach to it. So the cover is a human heart, but it's actually a little bit more symbolic because this heart I made out of a road map, and this road map is actually of Salem. So I kind of wanted to bring in some elements from the Crucible into the cover. So here inside, this is the actual title of the book, and it's called Myriads of Forgiveness. So myriads just means infinities, but I wanted to kind of correlate that to this part right here. And this is just various translations of forgiveness. So you can see that forgiveness in English is highlighted, and the rest of them, as you can see, are in foreign languages. So that's what I kind of wanted to describe there. And this next page is just a quote here. And I really like this quote because it kind of sums up the theme that I'm covering in this book. So this quote is by Buddha, and it basically says, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And so in this next page, I kind of give a run through of what this book is really about. I'm not going to read it all, but I'll just give a short explanation of what this book is. So during the process of making this book, I went and surveyed 14 people, and I asked them 3 simple questions. So the first question was asking them, what does forgiveness mean to you? And their answers were purely original. They weren't dictionary definitions. They were what forgiveness personally meant to them. And so the second question was for them to recount an experience where someone had to forgive them or where they forgave someone else. And the third one was for them to visually express what forgiveness is. So here's the first page. This person unfortunately didn't add a picture, so I added one myself. But here is the first survey, and I'd like to read this one because it really is touching, and I found this one to be my favorite out of all of them. So this one came from a math teacher here at school. So the first question is, what does forgiveness mean to me? So this teacher said, forgiveness to me is choosing to see the good in a person instead of dwelling on the bad. Through life experiences, I've learned to accept that we are all human, including myself. We are going to make mistakes or do something that hurts somebody else. It's inevitable. It's up to me what I choose to focus on. I personally like to believe that we all have a kindness about us and want to live my life in a way that lets me continue to believe this. If I choose to hold grudges, then I hurt no one but myself. Forgiveness is choosing happiness over sadness and depression, peace and serenity over pain and turmoil, acceptance over rejection, hope and optimism over doubt and cynicism, trust over distrust. And the second one is talking about her experience regarding forgiveness. So she says, I had to forgive my dad for having an affair. When I was 8, my parents separated, but I didn't know why. They got back together within 6 months and have been happily married for 37 years. I honestly forgot about all of it over time until my junior year of high school. Somehow it came up again, and I found out that my parents separated because of my dad. I can't describe the hate I felt towards my dad, which was weird because my dad has always been one of my favorite people. We just get each other. But at that moment, I thought I'd never look at him the same. I had become a hateful person. I was rude to other people for no reason. I wasn't myself at all. I had this awful distrust in humanity. If my dad was capable of something so horrible, what did that mean about everyone else? This lasted about a year. But over time, I started to get worn out with that attitude. It's exhausting, being a hateful person. I couldn't do it anymore. I had to learn to forgive my dad. So I started talking to my mom. She had obviously forgiven him, or they wouldn't be together. That's when she taught me how she did it. She said she made the choice to keep believing in all the good things about my dad. She remembered what she loved about him in the first place. She also took responsibility for things she had done. I've never had more respect for my mom than that day, and it had continued to grow from there. As for my dad, it was a process. It took a lot of time, but I have totally forgiven my dad, and that's why I can talk about it today. I learned from a very valuable lesson about why it's important to forgive, and will continue to choose forgiveness for the rest of my life. So in this other part of the page, I included a reference from Avatar, and this is probably by far one of my favorite cartoons. And I like this show because it kind of it ties in themes of forgiveness. So in the show, there's I think the main villain in the beginning is Zuko, and he kind of is on vendetta for Avatar Aang, because he kind of because it's this whole big issue in this story. But the point is that Zuko wants to restore his honor, and the only way he can do that is by capturing Aang. So Zuko and Aang become enemies in the show. But after a whole long string of events, Zuko is coming to Aang asking, "Hey, can I be in your group? Can I be in your gang? Can I work with you to defeat the even bigger enemy, Lord Ozai?" So in the end, Aang doesn't hold a grudge against Zuko. He doesn't remember the past things he did. They kind of work together, and in the end, they actually take down Fire Lord Ozai, which is something really cool. So in this next page also, this came from another math teacher, and I think she's a Christian person. So here she kind of talks about religion in hers, which I think is really cool because it kind of is something unique, because not everyone talked about religion, and in this case she did, and I really like this because I kind of related to her faith. And here she talks about, forgiveness being related to Jesus, being related to the cross. And here she included a picture of the cross, and that's how she visually depicted forgiveness, which I thought was really cool because I did agree with her perspective as well. And here's another one, and this one came from a lunch lady here at school. So the picture is here of, I assume her shaking hands with her ex-husband. So in this excerpt, she talks about forgiving her ex-husband. And I think that was really cool because, a lot of ex-husbands, ex-wives are really hostile to each other. And, this woman had the courage to forgive her ex-husband. Despite that hostility, despite, that strained relationship, they still had the courage to forgive each other, which I think is something that, couples, ex-couples, whatever it may be, they have to learn to forgive each other. So in this next page, I got this from my 7-year-old sister, and this was really amusing, her story. So her piece talks about her friend, I think, breaking her pencil sharpener. And it's something so minor, but I kind of found a lot of impact in it. Because in the end, she decided to forgive her friend. And I think that was really, really amazing because she's only 7, yet she's kind of already understood such a grand topic. She's already understood, the weight of forgiveness. And I put here on the bottom, forgive like a child, because I found something really, really true about this. That children sometimes have they have that easiness to forgive. They forgive people, they don't think about what they did. They just forgive because they know that there's no other thing to do. It's all about forgiveness for them. And here I kind of brought back the same thing. And this came from my 8-year-old cousin. His piece was really short. I think he got hit by his friend by accident. But I think it was really cool because though it's really short, though it's really small, I think he still demonstrated such an understanding of the topic. And this one came from an English teacher here at school. And so in his little survey, he describes a friend telling a lie about him. And even so, he still forgave him, and he still, he did forgive him, but in the end, they didn't ever become friends again, which is unfortunate, but still, I think it's still a good thing that he forgave him. And here he kind of describes what his definition of forgiveness is, which is putting aside differences and learning to heal. And this next page also comes from an English teacher here, and this is just kind of a little piece, and his is really, really deep. It's really intellectual. And he says, forgiveness is a affirmative resolution to a transgression. At the heart of forgiveness is recognition and acceptance of human fallibility. And so here he kind of just talks about an experience he had with his sister and how he realized that his sister was actually the one who needed to be forgiving. So I thought that was actually really interesting because it was kind of like a reverse experience, because a lot of people kind of gave an experience where they had to forgive someone, but in this one his sister had to forgive him, which is interesting also. So here came from another Christian person. See, he kind of gives his illustration as Jesus on the cross, and so here I kind of just did little flaps to show what his responses were. So his says, I think forgiveness, depending on the context, means letting go of any wrongdoing or wiping away any debt that is owed. And here just is his experience. So his comes from I think at probably a supermarket, and a few months ago, a shopping cart I was using got away from me and banged into a nearby car. After leaving a note, I was contacted by the owner asking what had happened. Rather than requiring me to pay for repairs and even get angry with me, they accepted my apology and said not to worry about it. So I kind of thought that was cool, and for that reason I put here, I cut out words from magazines, Why Not Have the Best World. And I kind of scattered little quotes like that throughout the book to kind of show that, that forgiveness demonstrated in his experience, can truly change the world. So if we just learn to forgive, we can try to make the best world out of what we have. And so this one came from my neighbor. And here she kind of describes an experience she had with her friends where she kind of got in a little scuffle with them. So, and in the end, her friends were asking her for forgiveness, and even she even realized that the grudge that she had been holding wasn't even right in the first place. So here she kind of describes, these are her two friends, and in the excerpt you can see that her friends had sang her a song to ask for forgiveness, and here her two friends are actually singing. And so here I kind of cut out this picture from a magazine because I thought it kind of symbolized what, like the emotions that were in the text. So it's kind of like that hostility, as this man and his partner has in their bed, which I thought was really cool. And so this one I kind of did kind of like a mosaic. I used like shaving cream and food coloring to make this mosaic type thing. And this came from my neighbor also. And so she says, forgiveness to me means knowing that someone has done wrong toward you, and being able to not have bitterness in your heart toward that person, whether they say they're sorry or not. And so I think I put the picture on the side, but here kind of describes her visual representation of it. And she also puts a symbol of the cross as forgiveness. Okay, and here I decided to add another quote, and this comes from one of my favorite songs. It's called Emphasis. It's by a band called Sleeping at Last. So the quote says, a speck of light can reignite the sun and swallow the darkness whole. And I think that's the same idea about forgiveness. Forgiveness seems like something so minor, something so small, that when we hand it out, we don't really understand the impact of it. We don't understand, how big of a difference we're making when we choose to forgive. And when we forgive, we choose to reject hatred, we reject bitterness, and we reject, that hostility that comes with grudges, that comes with that vengeance. So I think this kind of demonstrated what I was trying to depict in this book. And then this kind of has two responses on the same page because they were rather short, but this one came from teacher and then this one came from my bus driver. But here she kind of describes her having to forgive students who cheated on a test. And this one she actually asked forgiveness to her son because I think she hollered at him. And here she kind of describes a crude picture of a hug, but I think it's still pretty cool. And here is a quote I really like. It's by John Green, and he says, the only way out of the labyrinth of suffering is to forgive, which is very, very true. This one came from another member of the faculty. So she also had that kind of Christian perspective towards forgiveness. So she says, as a Christian, I believe that we should forgive people when they are wrong or hurt us, because God forgave us for our sins. We love and we forgive and repent in response to his love and forgiveness of us. Is this hard? Absolutely. But when we harbor unforgiveness against people, it harms us more than them. Let it go, let God handle it. So she kind of included this quote from Ephesians 4:32. And to complement it, I included shaking hands, because I think that's also a symbol of forgiveness. Being able just to let go of all the past and choose love instead. And on top of here, forgiveness is very possible. And here I kind of included, this isn't a response, but this is kind of something I wanted to tie in. So this comes from the movie Flipped. It's based on the book by Wendell Van Drain, but it revolves around the two characters, Bryce Losky and Julie Baker. And so at the start of the story, Julie Baker has this insane crush on Bryce Losky, but Bryce Losky wants nothing to do with her. So after a series of events, Julie Baker is seriously not liking this guy. She detests him with all her being, and the ironic thing is that at that point of the story, Bryce starts to like her, which I think is kind of the point. That's why the story is called Flipped. But in the end, you can see that they're having their resolution because things are really strained between them. But Bryce decides to go to her house and plant a sycamore tree. And if you did read the book, if you do know what this book is, the sycamore tree is very, very symbolic to her, and it's a symbol of it's that release from absolution. It's just that point where they can finally start to see each other in that proper light. And that's actually how the book ended. Wendell Van Drain ends the book in Julie's perspective by saying it was time to see him in the proper light, which I think kind of relates to forgiveness in a sense. And this is the last response, and this came from another teacher. And I really liked his because his was a little bit longer, which I think was cool because a lot of people decided to take, a really short route. They didn't really write much, but he actually got into it. So he says, forgiveness to me is when a person has done them. Forgiveness to me is when a person is finally okay with the wrong someone or something else has done to them. Forgiveness is that true feeling of peace one feels when the past incident is truly in the past. Forgiveness does not require forgetting, however, as you can truly be at peace with someone, despite not wanting to see them. Forgiveness is a key aspect of both love and peace. For one to truly love someone, they must be able to forgive them as well. Even the people we love will upset us, and holding a hatred in your heart will only cause a divide and lead to loneliness. The same can be said for peace as well. Forgiveness is a key aspect of life, and we need forgiveness in our lives to truly be happy. And so this is kind of the last page, and this was my personal take on it. So I'm just going to read it because I kind of took my time to kind of make it really personal. So regarding forgiveness, I said, I've never really thought about forgiveness. It had merely been a word I'd known, but not truly understood. I understood vengeance inside and out because I had practiced it, and even once endorsed it. But forgiveness was different. All the surveyors had an answer, but I was still pretty skeptical of it. I even questioned how I could construct a book inundated with forgiveness when I had not yet learned to forgive one last person. This person for actions left unsaid, not directly, but in a sense, made my self-esteem start dangling from the floor. I felt low every day, and when we would pass each other in the hallway, this person would always say hello, but I made it my mission to avert my face completely. I would not say I hated that person because it simply isn't true. Though we don't speak anymore, this person is still a friend. Nonetheless, I found myself falling into a pool of vengeance. I said a derogatory thing, and the moment it slipped, I had one of those famous epiphanies. I realized I was nowhere near finding out what forgiveness meant to me, since I had yet to give it. This person never did apologize, but I was only tormenting myself, not letting it go. I made a simple decision, and seeing that resolution take shape in my life showed me what it meant to forgive someone. Forgiving is being able to look someone in the eye and see their positive attributes, not the wrong they did to you. It's feeling peace, love, and kindness, not the previous scorn and ire you held before. Forgiveness does not excuse their behavior. Forgiveness prevents their behavior from destroying you. Universally known, forgiveness is painful, especially when they don't deserve it, and does not come overnight. Because of this, many choose vengeance. This very happening can be delineated in The Crucible. John and Elizabeth Proctor's marriage is plagued with times of the past, especially John's infidelity. And this causes tension between them and only creates a larger gap between them also. They were like ticking time bombs ready to combust, unstable and unsettled, simply because there wasn't that resolution between them, or even between they themselves. It wasn't until the very end that they had reached that absolution. As a reader, you can feel the forgiveness emanating from their words. Unfortunately, only these two had some sense. The rest of Salem was immersed in vengeance, with not the slightest care for pardons. 3 people, including John, were victims to vengeance, not including the ones lost before. You can simply look at the ending as bleak, but there is much more to it. We can learn from these characters and their mistakes because we have the knowledge. Salem was vengeful, so we choose to be better. I didn't have to tell these surveyors what forgiveness is, because they knew. We all know what it is, even if it's something different to all of us, so why don't we try to put it into action? Forgiveness is only as small an impact as a noun, but when it's a verb, an action, things begin to shift. Irrational feuds, bitterness, broken friendships would be eradicated. We could finally act brotherly to each other and harbor love, even for the people that cross us. If every person chose to forgive the next person to wrong them, conflict could be avoided. Conflict that can escalate into things far worse than they started. All we have to do is forgive and choose to be better. Grudges are time-consuming and do not benefit you whatsoever. Turn forgiveness into a real action, and you'll see the world around you start to change. And so just to finish off, I put here on the last page, the way we think must evolve. And I cut this out from Wired magazine, and I think it's very true. If we don't start to change the way we think, if we kind of just keep on harboring that hatred, that resentment, things aren't going to change. Things are going to stay the same. We're going to keep on seeing divorces. We're going to keep on seeing wars. We're going to keep on seeing this endless bitterness between people. And we have to, and still we expect things to change, but we don't do anything. We keep on having hatred for people. We keep on harboring that rancor for people. We don't let things go because we're only harming ourselves. We're only making things worse for us because they can continue their lives doing whatever they want, but you holding on to that isn't going to make things better. It's going to make things worse for you. So doing this kind of inspired me to spread this message of forgiveness, because without forgiveness, we're never going to be able to love. So just to finish off, I've put on the last page, forgive always. So that's my message. Forgiveness is universal. You know what forgiveness is, so forgive always, because it's extremely important. I'm Jasmine Ruiz, and this has been my project. Thanks for watching.